2.
Hello and welcome to this edition of In the House with Representative Jason Lewis. My name is Alan McDonald, and it's my pleasure to act on behalf of the community to give us the chance to welcome Representative Lewis to this session of In the House and hear the wonderful things that are happening on Beacon Hill and some of the things that need more attention on Beacon Hill and why, and the good things that are happening in the town of Winchester while we're at it. But Representative Lewis, great to have you here.
Great to be back with you, Alan. Thank you again, as always, for hosting our show and giving me a chance to share with the folks at home what's happening here in Winchester and at the state level.
Oh, this is a real pleasure, and it is important for us to be able to tune in with you, and we appreciate the time you give to this because it really is something we need to know about so often and don't get a chance. Blips in the paper here and there, but the real first-person message is what we love to hear, and you've been involved in a lot of things. So this is the heart of the legislative season right now, right in the middle of budget activity, and there are particular things that you see coming up in the budget discussions that are important for us to know about.
Well, exactly as you said, the state budget season is sort of a 6-month process. It starts in January when the governor puts forward his proposal for the following year. Then the House of Representatives debates the budget in April. So we just finished that. And the Senate takes it up in May. And then the Senate and the House versions have to be reconciled. And that's happening as we speak, and then the governor gets one more crack at it. So it's a thoughtful and thorough process. It's not perfect, but it does take into consideration, all of the different needs that we have all across the Commonwealth. And I think I'm pretty happy with through the last several years, which have been very challenging years for the state economically and in terms of our budgets at the state and local level. We have been able to balance the budget and get budgets in place on time and be able to keep moving forward. This year, things are improving in terms of the state's economy. The unemployment rate is still certainly higher than we would like it to be, but it is moving in the right direction, and our tax revenues have started to pick up from where they were in the worst years of the recession. So that's helpful. The big challenge in the budget, though, continues to be that healthcare costs, continue to increase, although fortunately the rate of increase is slowing now. But that continues to be a big challenge for the state budget, and as well as Winchester's town budget also, and other communities and many businesses.
I want to come back
to that. We're still struggling to balance that out.
You've been very active in healthcare issues, and I want to come back to that. But on the budget in general, I know you've had some success with a couple of amendments in your background as a good manager on the private issues in the private economy as well as now in the public side. You've had a yearning to have the state concentrate on the right management, the right efficiencies, and running state government is not easy. It's a big ship to
yes,
run.
Indeed, it is. It's a big operation. They have a lot of different responsibilities, and I think the state's the largest employer. In the state government's the largest employer. So I put forward for a few years now a proposal that would create essentially a government effectiveness and efficiency commission, would have representatives with all different expertise, and they would be charged with looking across all the different departments and agencies and look at ways, potentially ideas for innovations, better use of technology, better online services, whether there's opportunities to combine some functions within agencies or across agencies, with the twin goals of both improving services to the public as well as saving money. And what gave me this idea actually was this was modeled after what Connecticut did several years ago, and they had a similar process and was quite successful in identifying dozens of different ideas. Not all of them panned out, but the ones that did were quite effective, and they claimed they saved several $100 million, or over time they will,
time.
through the implementation of these ideas. So the House of Representatives, during the budget debate, I put this forward as an amendment, and unfortunately that was adopted. We still need the Senate to adopt it, and that's where we've stalled in previous years. The Senate hasn't always concurred with the House, but this time we're hopeful we'll get across the goal line.
Are there other states, Connecticut's is the leader in this on their own? Or?
The Connecticut was I think the first, but this is becoming something that more states are looking at, which is something standard in the business world. Particularly larger companies are always looking at ways, always looking for new approaches, new ideas, looking at best practices that in other companies in their industry or in other, the academic world, trying to draw on ideas. So some of that does go on already. It's not to say that, as you well know, there's plenty of people who are pursuing, innovations and more efficiencies. But the idea of sort of stepping back with a group of experts and trying to look holistically across all areas as opposed to, just focusing on one particular area.
Of course, you know it well because you've done it. But each and every year on the private side, you are looking at how to be more efficient, how to do it better. Whatever you've been successful in the past, use that as the base for what's the next step to be even more successful.
Right.
And in the public side, and you've been involved in that for a long time now too, you don't necessarily have that sense of urgency to do it. You have to make yourself do it sometimes.
Yes.
But it's so important because whatever we're doing now, we could do a little bit better.
That's right. And plus the world around you is changing.
Yeah.
And technology is such a good example of that. Unfortunately, so many of our state agencies are still using old technology. Some of the problems we're even seeing right now that have been publicized about eligibility issues and potential fraud in some of our social service programs. A lot of that can be tied back to not having good data systems. So we're not able to check in real time to ensure whether somebody has moved or somebody's passed away, and those are the kinds of real-time systems that the technology's out there, but we do have to invest in it and make it a priority so we can be more efficient at the state level.
In that regard, too, I think I noticed that you won another award, but it was an award for regional collaboration. I think the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Does that sound right?
Yes, I was. That was very honored. I was surprised. I didn't think I was, warranted that award. But we've been working together for a few years now, and they're a regional planning agency. Part of their region includes Winchester, and they provide technical services to communities, things like intra-municipality agreements, regional collaborations that communities are trying to do another way to save money and to be more efficient. That's sort of their traditional heritage, but they've been moving more. One of the areas they've been getting more involved in is in the area of public health, as it relates to smart growth and smart zoning, because they understand that one of the drivers of smart growth planning and transit-oriented development is that it's a major contributor to health and well-being. And so that's an area, because of my role on a number of healthcare committees in the legislature, that I've done work on. So that we found a nice common ground there. And we've worked together on legislation, that one bill that passed last session, and we have another one we filed this session that we're working on.
It weaves together pretty well. I mean, the idea of the state good government, the efficiency in government, practices, management practices in government, and then the regional collaboration. Boy, with the budget process, with how to do it better, all that weaves together.
Yes.
And you are, as I understand it, the vice chair of the Joint Committee on Public Health, the House and Senate together, which puts you in a situation of leadership on the public health issues. But they really do relate to all the areas of wellness and outreach to the general public on so many areas now that we know we can do better on with health.
And as we've talked about before, one of the things that I find exciting about this is, in addition to when people are healthier, they feel better, they're more productive. Sure. It's good for the individuals and families, communities. The other thing is, with the high rates of preventable chronic diseases that we're facing, whether it's type 2 diabetes, heart disease, stroke, some forms of cancer, many of which are tied to our lifestyle choices. The more we can do to, through things like smart zoning, smart growth, encouraging, more walking, more biking, access to healthier foods, things we can do in schools for kids, then that's going to have a direct impact on people, on reducing the rates of those preventable diseases, and then that's also going to help as another strategy to control healthcare costs.
You've been doing a lot of work in the tobacco area, and one of the things we know has been a problem is young people becoming cigarette smokers before they know better.
Right.
And very hard to stop, and we know the health effects are very, very negative. So you've been working hard on that.
Well, this relates to this very area of preventable diseases. We know, the number one, preventable health condition is tobacco. And we know when most people who use tobacco start when they're teenagers. Middle school, high school students. So we know if we can stop them there, we're going to prevent lung cancers, throat cancers, all these other diseases down the road, and people will live longer, healthier lives. So the states is actually we're close to agreeing on an increase in the excise tax for cigarettes as well as other tobacco products, and that's going to help. With transportation financing, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about in a minute. But another strategy that I've been pushing is related to packaging. For example, you can't buy cigarettes individually. You have to buy them in minimum. Well, that hasn't been true for these small candy-flavored cigars. I mean, many people aren't even aware these products exist, but the tobacco industry has been coming out with new products. And these are watermelon flavored, cherry flavored, grape flavored. They're small. They're not the cigars that you traditionally think of. They're not really targeted at adults. I mean, they really are targeted at young people. And now, for the first time ever, the use among high school students of cigarettes, has gone below the use of these other products, which includes these cigars as well as smokeless tobacco. So the proposal that was adopted by the House, it was also an amendment to the budget I put forward, would require you could not sell these cigars in less than unit packages of 4. So the idea is obviously it raises the price, and that we've seen in the city of Boston, which has done this at a local level, that it acts as a deterrent to young people, purchasing and smoking these cigars.
Well, I just learned something, I have to say. I'm leading a sheltered life, but I had no idea about
normally when I talk about this issue, I do show and tell. And I have my drawer at the office, I have these cigars, I have other products. It's remarkable, people just, the tobacco industry is constantly looking for new ways to come out with products that are going to get another generation, addicted to tobacco. And unfortunately, it's a constant battle we're fighting.
Okay, well, I had no idea, so I just learned something, and because you're so involved in these wellness issues, and I know it's not just even for youth and individuals and general population, it's for farm animals and those kinds of things too. You were in, I know I saw a photo in the local press a while back that you were with a group working on those kinds of issues too.
I've done I have some legislation in that area. Actually, I just filed a new bill this week. Most legislation is filed the beginning of the session, the legislative session, but you can file legislation along the way.
Okay.
And I began, my daughter actually is a middle schooler, and she's very interested in marine biology. And so she did a camp at the New England Aquarium last summer, and she's always been interested in that. So got me talking to some people over there, and one of the things I learned a bit about was this horrendous practice that's of shark finning. What happens is sharks are caught, and then they bring them onto the ship. They cut off their fins, and then throw the animal back overboard. So the animal's still alive, but basically drowns or can't dies a horrible death. The tens of millions of sharks a year are dying this way, and the big issue is they're the top of the food chain. So it's an ecological impact on the oceans. The reason they do this is to make shark fin soup, which is a delicacy in parts of the world. So what we can do, in the U.S. already bans this practice, but what we do is we import these fins, and so at the state level we can pass a ban on the import and sale and possession of these fins. And it's a way for us to help stop the trade in these products and protect the ocean ecology. So we'll see. It's a new bill. They are working with the New England Aquarium on this, as well as various other conservation groups. And you know, it's going to take some education, we're hopeful we'll get it done.
Well, it's a shame that the myths build up around things like shark fin soup. I guess that you've got to have a fin and throw the shark back. I mean, it's so I'm delighted you're working on that.
It's one of these things. It's unfortunate. Same thing with ivory from elephants and others. You know, they're very wasteful practices because it's one thing if you take the whole animal and you use all the parts, which is what the U.S. fishery industry does do. But if that's all you're doing, it's very wasteful.
Okay, no, well, these are the kinds of things you get in the middle of. You may not know this when you first run for office. But,
I never would have predicted. Never would have predicted some of the issues you get involved in. And I certainly, as we've said, I try to make sure I stay focused on the bread and butter issues that most matter to Winchester, and that's our school funding and our transportation and our health care. But fortunately, there's a little bit of time here and there to be able to focus on take on a few of these other issues that you try to do.
You are certainly
try to
not a
move the ball
candidate.
forward.
That's a fact. But that's what makes life interesting too. And you can come in and get involved in all of these things. And we'll get to a few of the local things too. But the fact that you're in a position of importance at the state level on these things is a credit to you and to the community that we have somebody to go forward and worry about these things. You mentioned transportation as an issue, and it's really key for us here in our relationship with the Metropolitan Bay Transportation Authority. And a few years ago, in fact, in 2009, you were part of the group in the legislature that merged the MBTA with the Turnpike Authority and with the Highway Department, and made it all under one Secretary of Transportation, and I think that's brought some focus that hopefully has benefited us here in the railroad station redo, and the kind of attention that you've brought to the issue of financing public transit, because for too long we've been suffering with a lot of debt for public transit that's been tied into the so-called Big Dig, and other communities haven't had to bear that burden for public transit, but we're trying to figure it all out. But you just had a ribbon cutting down at Wedgemere Station, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's a great project for the community, and it took longer than it should have, and I think it did go a little over budget. But it was actually funded by the ARA, the stimulus bill that came out of Washington. And we were fortunate we were ready to go and we were qualified for that funding. So that paid for the project. And anyone who hasn't been over there yet, there's some beautiful new ramps. And once you're on the train platform, they're called mini highs. And basically anyone now, whether if you're in a wheelchair, you have a stroller, you use a walker, anything like that, now the station's fully accessible. And so it's another good step forward for the community in terms of inclusiveness, so that's a great project to be completed.
Well, you've made the point on the collaboration and good government is being able to prepare. We were shovel ready for that, but the relationships that we have with the town leadership and the state leadership are very, very positive. And and I have to say to the viewers, you may think because we live in this community and we see it all the time in collaboration, that's the way it is everywhere. It's not that way in every community, and the relationship that we have with our state leaders and local leaders is very, very positive.
Well, thank you for pointing that out, and this was a good example because it did take the town, the selectmen, and the disability commission, and the planning board was very involved, and the town engineer was very helpful, and then you had our state delegation, the MBTA, Governor Patrick, and then our congressional, Congressman Markey was very involved in this too. So it was an example of government at different levels can work together.
That's
We
right.
can collaborate, and we got this done. Now what we're really focused on, you finish one thing, ribbon cutting, move on, next project
Absolutely.
is the Winchester Center commuter rail station, which is in major need of an overhaul. And fortunately, that project was, we started the design, but then it kind of got put on hold because of the uncertainty around transportation financing in the state, and what would happen there, and whether the legislature would, appropriate more funding. So now, fortunately, that's, some of that uncertainty has has gone away, and the MBTA is ready to move forward on the train Winchester
I
Center
think
station.
you've done
So
a lot.
that's
If you
starting up
read-
again.
I think when you and I were here on one of our sessions last year, we were talking about a one-time fix for the
Yes.
MBTA budget deficit. And
did.
of course, the discussion was cutting out routes, and there had been a number of routes that were important to the town of Winchester,
Sure.
users of the public transit, that were in jeopardy,
We
frankly.
had our 2 bus lines,
Yeah.
plus there was a proposal to end commuter rail service on the
Correct.
weekends. So we did we had sort of a temporary fix a year ago in their budget. But this year now there is legislation that's almost on the governor's desk,
Yeah.
which will substantially increase the revenues available to the transportation agencies,
That'll make
along
a
with
big
putting
difference.
some more requirements on them for continued efficiencies and management improvement. But that should stave off any further fare increases or any service cuts for
Yeah,
the
no,
time
you've
being.
definitely, the idea that came out of the legislature and reform before revenue
Mm-hmm.
has taken effect, frankly, and what you've done this year is so important for the consistency of doing budgets year in, year out, because if it's a one-year fix each year, it's just, you can't manage, back to your good government and efficiencies and management. You can't do that if you have to guess ahead each year on what you'll be going with a tin cup to the legislature
Right.
for, while the constituents are waiting for, being able to depend on the service. And there are a lot of services that we do depend on because they have high priority: education, public health, those kinds of things. But there's only so much general revenue, as we know, to fit all of those needs.
Right.
And sometimes transportation gets blocked out as a real important need, but for a number of individuals, that
Yep.
it means a lot to their life, quality of life, and ability to sustain themselves in good working conditions.
It's essential, getting
right.
to work, getting to medical appointments,
Yeah.
shopping, school. It
Yeah.
drives the economy. We should also mention for the folks at home, how involved you've been, and you've given very unselfishly of yourself and the advisory board to the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for a number of years, and also serving on the Mass DOT board. And recently, as we were talking about just before the show, that you're going to be chairing the new public-private partnership commission, which I'm very excited about, because I think that's another good example of government innovation, where we're going to be looking at some of these challenging projects that we want to get done, where we don't have enough public money to do it, but the private sector won't do it on their own either. Can you do it through a partnership? So
Well, there's
that's
so
something
much.
I'm very grateful that you're taking on that leadership,
you.
and we're
No,
very
thank you very
fortunate
much.
to have you do that, Alan.
Thank you very much. I was fortunate, lucky to get involved, in 1990, 91, and some studies on public infrastructure and capital needs over a 10-year look ahead, and we spent time with some really talented people in that field, and I was a rookie student, for crying out loud. But you pick it up over the course of 20 years by hanging around with the right people that know those things. And we have seen a lot of examples of public-private contributions that have made a difference in other states. And as we looked at the kinds of capital investment those other states had made, and even historically, going way back in the 1800s and those kinds of things, so much private investment built the infrastructure of the railroads,
Right.
of the original roads, not the interstate highways now.
Yes.
That's a matter of the 1950s till now. But when you look back prior to the 1950s, and that's a short period of time in national history, we didn't have a lot of public investment in infrastructure for transportation. The canals were privately put together, And all of the Port Authority stuff that we now have as public investment was mostly private investment. So we don't have to go all the way back there, but there's an opportunity with the right kind of public oversight to draw in investment that makes a tremendous difference for the public good, but that satisfies enough of the private equity investors. There's an opportunity to see an investment grow, but also for private users of the public system. There's a great example now in Alston over by New Balance, where we're going to see New Balance and the companies in that area finance the development of an MBTA station and guarantee the first 10 years of maintenance of that station because it's so important to that area. But it's there for the entire public use of the Alston, Brighton, Alston neighborhood, and it's going to be the foundation for investment in other things that the public can now get to in terms of public skating rink, auditorium for racetrack. You know, when I say racetrack, a personal race, an individual, you know, 440-yard dash kind of a racetrack, but it'll be world class.
Right.
And all of this comes from the private side in that area being interested in making it happen.
Yep.
But it's all going to be done with public oversight, and
Right.
that's going to be.
I
a
think
big
it's
help.
the model of the future. And we may be looking at some of that right here in Winchester as we renovate, rebuild the station. We have the area on the water, where the Waterfield lot is, where that may be, you know, becoming available, and that would be an opportunity for private development, but in sync with what we're doing in
We'll talk
the
a
train
little bit
station.
about that as we go down the road too, but we only have a short period of time left. I always regret how fast this goes. But we only have 3 or 4 minutes left, and I want to bring up something that you've been involved in, again, on collaboration, and that is the state partnership with the town on things like the Winchester High School
yes.
project.
Right.
Because that's a major issue
Where
for
we're
us,
sitting
and
right
where we're
now in
sitting
the
at.
WIMCANT studios right here in the
is-
Winchester High School.
That is correct. But we've got a situation, and I think the public has been able to follow it through the press, but we've gone through designs, as we know, with the state, and the state requests for certain things, and the town is going to have an opportunity to invest in a new high school, and we're going to come up with a decision on that during this particular year.
Yes, yeah, that's it. I don't think there's any more important project for the future of the town of Winchester than the high school. And that's not just for the students today and in the future, but for the entire community. It's a very important project. The project is, it's a very long process to make sure we're very thorough in evaluating the needs and the alternatives and the costs. And so we're in the middle of that process. But we do expect we'll present a final design to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which is the agency that partners with communities, in by October. And they'll vote on it by October, and that would mean we'd be in a position to ask the community, you know, whether there's enough support for the project to move forward. So I encourage anybody out there to take the time, and if you haven't already, learn a little bit more about it. You know, understand why we need to do this and what the benefits will be to the school system and the community. There are many benefits in terms of health and safety and curriculum and sustainability and lower operating costs, energy costs, and a whole host. But I think it's important for residents to understand that, you know, so we know what we'll be getting for our dollar.
Well, I think our Education Facilities and Building Committee, under Bob Deering as chair, I doubt that there's any committee in the state for a community that's worked any harder than this particular one. And they've had a wonderful track record on the elementary school and junior high level, middle school,
Yes.
we call it.
Yes.
But the advances we've made in the last decade plus in those areas are extraordinary, and it's what keeps attracting good new citizens to the town of Winchester to come in and be with us. And the capstone, it would seem to me, is that we're going to have a high school that needs to be done. It's 40 years, really, for this school that we're in now, and it's still fine in some respects, but 40 years is time to look ahead for what we need to do now.
That's right. And I think the proposal that's likely to move forward, you know, is a smart one. It recognizes we don't have to knock down the entire building and start from scratch. We've got a lot we can work with, but within that, there's an opportunity to rehab and renovate and improve the facility.
Well, we'll talk some more about that, because that's something for the summer and fall to come to a conclusion on. But our time has come to an end for this particular half hour, and I Want to thank you very much, Representative Jason Lewis.
Well,
and
thank
and
you,
thank
Alan.
all the viewers for being with us for this edition of In the House. We appreciate your tuning in and look forward to hearing from you in between now and the next session. And we'll welcome you to the next session of In the House as the legislature draws to a conclusion on its budget process in this particular session. So thank you very much. Great to be with you again,
Great.
Jason.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alan.
See you back here soon. Great.